The chandeliers above the ballroom burned like golden fire, their light catching the glint of diamonds and whispered cruelty. Everyone turned as Layla Hart stood trembling in front of him. Her ex-boyfriend, Zayden Al-Masari, heir to a vast Arab conglomerate whose arrogance was as famous as his fortune. She had been invited tonight, not out of affection, but humiliation. "If you can fit into that dress," Zayden smirked, holding up a glittering couture gown, "I'll marry you right here, in front of everyone." Laughter rippled through the guests, cruel, effortless, expensive laughter. The kind that doesn't come from humor, but from privilege. Layla's throat tightened. She looked at the gown, the same one his fiancée, Claudia, had just modeled on the runway. It was tiny, custom-made, and a weapon disguised as silk. Zayden leaned closer, his voice a low venom. "You said I'd regret leaving you, remember? Prove it then. Fit into this, and I'll sign the papers myself." For a moment, the world blurred. Cameras flashed. The crowd murmured. Layla's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't cry. Not this time. She took the dress, folded it neatly in her arms, and whispered, "One day, Zayden Al-Masari, you'll wish you never said those words." 2 months later, rain soaked the streets of London. Layla walked fast, clutching a folder filled with her sketches, her real dream. Not to marry him, not to wear his diamonds, but to become a designer whose work could silence every cruel laugh she had ever endured. But dreams like hearts were fragile. She was broke, working in a secondhand store, saving every penny to launch her line. Her only reminder of that night was the dress, hidden in a box beneath her bed, a symbol of every wound she refused to hide. That night, she stitched until dawn. Her fingers bled on the fabric, her tears mixing with thread. She wasn't just making clothes, she was rebuilding dignity. 3 months later, at a London fashion showcase for emerging designers, Zayden Al-Masari sat in the front row, bored, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up until the host announced, "Our final designer tonight, Layla Hart, founder of Atelier." The crowd murmured. Zayden's phone froze mid-scroll. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. And there, under the spotlights, came the models, walking in dresses carved from pain and resilience, inspired by storms and scars, by beauty that didn't ask for permission. Then came the final piece, a gown shimmering in white and gold silk, familiar yet reborn. The same dress, the one he'd mocked her with. Except this time, it bore her name on the label. And when the audience rose in applause, Zayden couldn't move. His laughter had built her, but now it drowned beneath her triumph. Layla didn't look his way once. Because some victories aren't meant to be shared, they're meant to be witnessed. The applause still echoed in the grand hall as Layla stepped backstage, heart racing, chest heaving with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the realization that every stitch, every sleepless night had led to this moment. Meanwhile, Zayden Al-Masari sat frozen in the front row, his polished leather shoes tapping against the marble floor. The crowd's cheers, once deafening to his ego, now felt like hammers pounding at his pride. He had laughed that night months ago, the cruel, careless laugh of a man convinced he could humiliate anyone without consequence. And now, in the glow of her success, he realized that he had underestimated her power, her talent, her resilience. How? He muttered under his breath, barely audible to himself. The host approached the stage to present Layla with a plaque, Emerging Designer of the Year, Atelier. Zayden felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. He wanted to stand up, speak, reclaim some measure of control, but every instinct screamed that tonight he had none. Backstage, Layla was wiping sweat from her brow when her assistant whispered, "Zayden Al-Masari is asking for a word with you." Layla's hand paused. She'd imagined this moment countless times, his apology, his pride, his arrogance crushed under her success. Yet part of her felt wary. This man had once humiliated her in front of the world. Could she trust the intentions behind that sleek, commanding presence? She nodded slowly. Zayden approached, his tailored suit immaculate, but his posture uncharacteristically tight. There was no laughter in his eyes this time, only something heavier, recognition, awe, and an unfamiliar humility. "You've outdone yourself," he said, voice low. "Not flattery. Observation. You took everything I thought could break you and turned it into this." Layla tilted her head, measuring his words. "Months ago, you made a bet that humiliated me," she said, calm, steady. "Tonight, I show you who I really am. Do you understand the difference?" Zayden swallowed, the weight of that realization pressing down on him. "Yes," he admitted, "and it's more than I expected. You've reminded me that power isn't in wealth or status or arrogance. It's in strength you carry without asking for permission." The air between them shifted, no longer a game of bet and shame, but a quiet acknowledgement of respect. Zayden's gaze lingered on her eyes, fierce, determined, unbroken. "I have resources," he said carefully, "and influence. If you allow it, I want to help your atelier grow globally, not as a favor, but as recognition of talent and truth." Layla paused. The offer tempted her, but not for money. For justice. For the chance to show that her rise wasn't dependent on him, but enhanced by the very power he represented, now tempered by conscience. "I'll consider it," she said, finally, voice firm. "But under one condition, no shadows, no favors, no echoes of humiliation. I want the world to see Ash's atelier and no one else." Zayden nodded slowly, accepting the terms without argument. Something in him shifted, the arrogance tempered, replaced by a rare, grounded respect. That night, as the gala emptied and the lights dimmed, Zayden stood by the balcony overlooking London's skyline. The city glittered below, unaware of the quiet reckoning that had just unfolded. He thought back to the bet, the laugh, the cruel words, and realized how small, how meaningless they had been compared to what Layla had built from them. He smiled, almost imperceptibly, not a triumphant smile, but one that carried understanding and the beginning of change. And somewhere backstage, Layla packed up her designs, her eyes bright, knowing that the world and Zayden Al-Masari would never underestimate her again. Weeks later, Paris shimmered under the first light of spring. The city's streets buzzed with anticipation. The high-pitched hum of cameras, the scrape of heels on marble, and the scent of freshly printed invitations. Layla Hart had arrived at Paris Fashion Week, her atelier now a recognized force in the design world. Ash's atelier had grown not just on talent, but on grit and vindication. Every dress on the runway carried a story of betrayal, endurance, and quiet defiance. Zayden Al-Masari was there too, not as a judge, not as a guest, but as a silent ally. He had insisted on being in the background, ensuring security, contacts, and investors were aligned, all without overshadowing her spotlight. This was no longer about ego. It was about justice, acknowledgement, and integrity. "Remember," he whispered backstage, "they'll try to twist your story. They'll call you lucky. They'll call me controlling. But the truth is ours. Own it." Layla nodded, slipping into the first gown, a flowing midnight blue number with subtle gold embroidery along the seams. Every seam was intentional, every fold deliberate. This dress told the world, "I survived, I built, I rise." The runway lights hit and cameras flashed. Critics whispered. Investors leaned in. Influencers recorded every step. And as the final model strutted forward, carrying the dress that had started it all, the infamous dress Zayden had mocked, a hush fell over the crowd. It was transformed. Silk shimmered like starlight, the structure perfect, elegance undeniable. The dress no longer represented humiliation, it was triumph incarnate. Zayden watched, heart tightening. He remembered the night in the chandeliered ballroom, his arrogance, his laughter, his mistake. And now, watching her reclaim power, he realized he had never been more proud, nor more humbled. After the final bow, the room erupted. Critics scribbled furiously, photographers snapped endlessly, and social media exploded. Every mention of Layla's name was tied to courage, ingenuity, and a story of resilience against cruelty. Later, in a quiet corner of the hotel, Zayden approached Layla. "You've done more than fit in a dress," he said softly. "You've shown the world that strength isn't about size or appearance or even wealth. It's about vision, will, and perseverance." Layla's eyes met his. "You could have humiliated me forever," she said. "You had the power to destroy everything I loved. Why help me now?" Zayden looked out the window at the glittering city. Because I realized the real power wasn't in making bets or laughing at others. It's in lifting someone who's been underestimated and making sure the world sees their worth. For the first time, Layla saw him differently. Not just a millionaire heir, not just a man of arrogance, but someone capable of humility, justice, and true influence. Then let's finish this together, she said. Not as you and I, but as Ash's Atelier and the world it deserves to see. He nodded, agreed, and as Paris sparkled outside, they stepped toward the elevator, not as adversaries, not as betters or mocked, but as partners in a story the world would never forget. Paris was alive with celebration, but behind the glittering lights and champagne toasts, shadows moved. Layla Hart was riding the high of her global debut, the press hailing her as the designer who turned humiliation into triumph. But in the world of fashion, envy was a currency just as potent as money. Inside a sleek loft across the Seine, Vivienne Leclerc, a rival designer with a reputation for ruthless tactics, scrolled through photos of Layla's final runway dress. Her eyes narrowed, lips curling into a calculated smile. She thinks she can rise overnight, Vivienne murmured. Turn a stolen insult into fame. Let's see how she fares when the real game begins. Backstage, Layla was reviewing sketches with her team, unaware of the silent surveillance cameras Vivienne had planted. Every stitch, every upcoming design, every detail of her next collection was being captured and transmitted to Vivienne's private account. Zayden Al-Masari, ever vigilant, noticed the subtle signs, a small reflection of a lens in the corner mirror, the subtle weight of a suspicious figure lingering near the elevators. He moved silently, his presence a shadow behind Layla. Something's off, he whispered, scanning the room. This isn't admiration. Someone's tracking us. Layla frowned, gripping her pencil tighter. Who would do that now? We've survived ridicule, betrayal, and doubt. Who else? Zayden's eyes narrowed. Someone powerful, someone who knows what your success could cost them. That evening, after the runway, Layla returned to her atelier. Her laptop pinged with alerts, dozens of images, videos, and designs already circulating in a private network. Her heart skipped. The new collection, months of work, stolen. They're trying to ruin us, she said, voice shaking. Zayden stood behind her, calm but resolute. Then we fight smarter. They've underestimated us once. They'll underestimate us again, but this time they won't survive it. He pulled out a secure, encrypted device, evidence he had discreetly gathered on Vivienne's operations over months. Every espionage attempt, every leak, every shadowed move. We expose her, Zayden said. Not with threats, not with revenge, but with the world seeing her schemes for what they are. Truth will do the work better than money ever could. The next day, a press release hit Paris Fashion Week. Exclusive. Ash's Atelier designs leaked. Rivals attempt to sabotage exposed. Screens flashed Vivienne's name alongside evidence of her espionage. Investors withdrew, sponsors distanced themselves, and her elite clients whispered behind closed doors. Layla watched, heart pounding, as justice unfolded silently yet overwhelmingly. No shouting, no humiliation, just a quiet, undeniable truth. The atelier that had risen from ridicule now stood untouchable. Zayden, standing beside her, finally allowed a rare smile. See, power doesn't always belong to the cruel. Sometimes it belongs to those who rise above them. Layla exhaled, realizing this wasn't just a victory for Ash's Atelier. It was a declaration. She would never be underestimated again. And in that moment, under the soft Parisian light, she understood. Her journey with Zayden had transformed them both. One had learned humility, the other had found unstoppable strength. The next evening, Paris glittered like molten gold, the Seine reflecting the city's lights in liquid fire. Layla stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace of the Grand Palais, overlooking the gala hosted for the elite of the fashion world. Tonight wasn't just about celebration, it was about closure. Zayden Al-Masari appeared beside her, impeccably dressed, but his usual arrogance tempered by the weight of months of reflection. There was no laugh tonight, no cruel bet, only a quiet determination. Zayden, tonight you face them all, the critics, the rivals, the whispers of doubt. But you're not the same woman they tried to humiliate. Layla, I'm not afraid of them anymore. Not of anyone. As they entered the gala, cameras swarmed, but instead of fear or embarrassment, Layla felt power. Every glance she caught was filled with curiosity and awe. Her rivals' whispers turned to cautious murmurs. Her former tormentors' friends no longer sneered. They watched stunned. Then came the final moment of reckoning. Vivienne Leclerc, pale and trembling, approached with the last of her boardroom allies. Vivienne, this isn't possible. How did you? Layla's smile was soft but firm. Layla, months of work and months of patience. You underestimated the quiet strength of someone you tried to break. Zayden stepped forward, voice calm yet commanding. Zayden, she didn't just survive your schemes. She built something stronger than any wealth you hoarded or any rumor you spread. And tonight, the world sees it. A hush fell over the room. The press, the critics, the influencers. All eyes turned to Ash's Atelier's showcase in the center. The dresses were unforgettable, elegance carved from adversity, every seam a story of triumph over humiliation. Vivienne faltered. Vivienne, she turned my sabotage into beauty? Zayden's gaze met Layla's. Zayden, beauty forged from strength, from truth, from refusing to let others write your story. And then, as if the city itself demanded acknowledgement, the spotlights brightened, illuminating the final dress, the one he had mocked, reimagined beyond recognition, now symbolizing victory, dignity, and resilience. The crowd erupted in applause, cameras flashing like fireworks. Vivienne's empire of envy crumbled silently. Investors withdrew support, sponsors defected. Her attempt to destroy Layla only amplified Layla's legacy. Later on the terrace, Zayden turned to Layla. Zayden, do you forgive me? Layla considered the months of growth, the nights of anxiety, the moments he had humiliated her, and the strength she had built because of it. Layla, I don't forgive you for your arrogance. I forgive you for the man you became while I was rising. Zayden exhaled, a quiet smile breaking through the layers of pride and power. Zayden, then we move forward, not as the bet, not as the humiliation, but as truth in motion. And for the first time, the laughter that once humiliated became a soft, warm memory, a reminder that cruelty could be transformed into legacy and power could be wielded with integrity. Paris glittered below, and the night carried a promise. Those who try to break the strong may light a fire that cannot be extinguished. The sun rose over Paris, spilling golden light across the Seine. The city was waking, but atop the Grand Palais terrace, Layla Hart and Zayden Al-Masari were already moving. Not with haste, but with purpose. Months of trials, schemes, and humiliation had led here. The gala, the sabotage, the shadows of arrogance, all had been faced, and all had been transformed into truth and triumph. Layla's Atelier was now recognized worldwide. Investors from Milan, New York, and Tokyo were already arranging collaborations. And yet, her eyes were not on the wealth or prestige. They were on the lessons carved into every stitch, every fabric, every sleepless night. Zayden, standing beside her, watched as she directed her team. The man who had once laughed cruelly at a simple dress now realized that true power wasn't in money or ego, but in fostering courage, integrity, and resilience. Layla, do you know why I never accepted your bet? Zayden, because it was cruel? She shook her head, smiling softly. Because I knew even then I would rise. Not because of you, but despite you. For the first time, Zayden felt the weight of humility and the pride that comes not from dominating, but from recognizing and protecting brilliance. Zayden, then we'll make sure the world knows it. Ash's Atelier isn't just fashion. It's a statement that strength, courage, and truth can't be bought or mocked. They stood together, overlooking the city. Cameras and crowds below would soon capture this moment. But it was more than spectacle. It was a culmination of justice, redemption, and transformation. In the weeks that followed, Layla expanded her brand globally, mentoring young designers, exposing industry corruption, and creating a platform where talent triumphed over privilege. Zayden became more than a millionaire heir. He became a guardian of integrity, using his influence to elevate others rather than humiliate them. And every time they looked at the gown that started it all, the dress that had once been a weapon of humiliation, they remembered how power, when met with courage and moral clarity, could be transformed into something magnificent. Cruelty and arrogance can create fleeting power, but resilience, courage, and truth build legacies that endure. A bet meant to humiliate became a journey of strength. A laugh designed to wound birthed a triumph that inspired the world. And a millionaire who once wielded privilege carelessly learned that true influence is measured not by wealth, but by the lives you lift and the integrity you uphold. In a world dazzled by status, remember this. Those who rise from adversity, armed with courage and truth, will always leave a mark stronger than any fortune, any empire, or any bet.